Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Gary Collins. Gary Collins is a best-selling Amazon author and creator of thesimplelifenow.com. As a special agent for the U.S. State Department Diplomatic Security Service, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Gary's background and expert knowledge bring a much-needed perspective to today's areas of simple living, health, nutrition, entrepreneurship, self-help, and being more self-reliant. He holds an AS degree in exercise science, a BS in criminal justice, and an MS in forensic science. Gary was raised in the high desert at the basin of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in a rural part of California. He now lives off the grid part of the year in a remote area of Northeast Washington state and spends the rest of the year exploring in his travel trailer with his trusty black lab Barney. Gary considers himself lucky to have grown up in a small town from a very young age, and where he enjoyed fishing, hunting, and anything outdoors. He has been involved in organized sports, nutrition, and fitness for almost 4 decades. He is also an active follower and teacher of what he calls life simplification. His website, www.thesimplelifenow.com, and the Simple Life book series, his total lifestyle reboot, blows the lid off of conventional life and wellness expectations and is considered essential for every person seeking a simpler and happier life. Please join me in welcoming Gary Collins. Hey, Gary.
Wow, that guy sounds really good. Who wrote that?
No, I don't know who wrote that. I don't know who barely read that.
I know. Got a good ghostwriter. No, actually did those things and do those things, which is pretty shocking in today's self-help and kind of do-it-yourself world.
Well, it's funny. What's kind of funny is for somebody who believes in the simpler life, it sounds like your life hasn't been that simple. You've done so many things, and yet it sounds like what the path that you've been on. You've had exposure to a lot of different sides of the world, and through a lot of your work with the government and the service that you've offered, and yet you've seen so many things. So it's given you some decision points from which you've bounced off of and made some other choices for yourself.
Well, and it's tricky. I hate to say it that way, but the life I've lived and what I teach, sometimes it just doesn't quite resonate with people. And I don't mean that I'm some superhuman or something like that, and I'm so much better. I do not mean that at all.
Yeah.
What I've done is it just gave me a very, very different perspective of the world and how our country works than the average American.
Yeah.
And I tend to forget that I think differently on top of it. So, and part of that is because of the life I lived and the life I have lived.
Right. But I know that there was a time when you were, working for other entities, and that you've made a lot of transitions in your own professional life and in your life in general to be where you are now. And so I'm curious, what can you reflect on or share with our listeners around how you uncovered or discovered some of the transitions that you made along the way to move towards where you are now, so that, what were some of the things that you started to realize I need to make a change, or what were the, I don't know, I don't want to say struggles, but there were points where you said to yourself, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, and life's about stages is how I look at it. Then there's three primary stages. The first stage is you as a child, a young adult learning, right? This process of learning. The second stage is, going to college or entering the workforce and pursuing a direction. Where are you going? The third stage is where you go, okay, I think I've figured things out. And that's the stage of where knowledge and experience kind of come to a head, if that makes sense.
Yep.
When you're younger, you're just trying to figure things out. Of course, when you're 20, you think you know it all at that point anyway.
Right.
We all do. Right. We all think we're the smartest people in the room at age 20 when we're actually the dumbest.
Right.
And later in life, you start to put the pieces together. And the workforce has changed a lot too.
Yes.
I started working in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
And I worked in restaurants and, dug ditches, worked on ranches. I've done every crappy job known to man. I've been a maid. I mean, I cleaned rooms, hotel rooms, gardening, you name it, I've done it.
Yeah.
But those things are part of the stage, right? I had to learn how to do these things to appreciate other things, and you have to do them to take the next step. And I just didn't feel, for me, my passion was always helping people.
Yeah.
And that's why I did what I do. That's why I was in the military. Don't get me wrong. There were some other reasons as well, personal ones, and to better my life, have good health insurance, have a retirement, all those things too. But everything
you had some practical reasons,
yes,
pragmatic reasons why you joined the military. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. And it was to, again, better myself, get more money for college.
Yeah.
The things that I wanted to do. So I want to make it this complete altruistic Gary's this guy that
I get that. I mean, it's interesting though to see how you kind of evolved, because I think it's interesting to see how you made changes and how you've made your life about helping other people make change. You know what I mean? Because I think the story of your life and the changes you've made are very instructive. And yet it's not that you're expecting other people to go about making changes the way you did. Because part of what I hear you saying about your own changes or some of the changes you made, you're saying, I don't know why I did some of these things. I just felt kind of driven to do it. But yet I'm going to maybe experiment or try some things differently or do some things that feel right to me, even if it's not always well received by society at large.
Yes and no. Once people realize my journey and my story of how I got here, they go, oh, I get it. Because they thought most people, when you live in the government, and there's a lot of former retired government employees up here who did what I did. Let's just put it that way. And people think that I did it to escape, to hide. And I said, no. This was about freedom. This was about quiet. And this was a project I wanted to do far before it became popular.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted peace and quiet. I had been in a noisy world.
Yeah.
And I needed a break. But that was a personal decision. I don't force people to live off the grid who want to simplify their life.
Right.
There's so many things you can do in a city setting to simplify your life. They and my house is modern. It's a beautiful house.
Well, I mean, here we are. We're talking through the internet with microphones, right?
And people, the hardcores go, well, that's not living off the grid, but it's a Wi-Fi hotspot is how I'm doing it.
Right.
I have no hardwired anything. I have no public utilities tied. It's a house that runs on solar because I want people to understand what I'm teaching and be able, my whole goal is to absorb it and put it into practice.
When you start to speak to things in a way that are intended to be helpful to people, but then kind of provide somewhat of a radical, even though it's not really radical, it's a reframe of how people have been thinking about it, it makes them uncomfortable. And it makes me think about anytime somebody starts to get uncomfortable, it's usually because there's a need to make some sort of a change towards something that hopefully will improve their lives in some way.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's hard sometimes for people to get their minds around that. And then they start to shut down and they don't want to hear it. So in terms of the work that you do, or how I'm really curious though how you made the transition from, there was a point where you were at that point of discomfort, right?
Mhm.
Where you're working for the government, you finished your time in the military. I'm guessing were discharged from the military,
Yeah.
started working for the government, got your security clearances. You're working for the government for many years.
Yep.
How did you transition your professional life, and what were some of the key pivot points for you?
Well, one was I always had an exit plan
Oh, you did? Since when?
in everything in life. I found out once I kind of self-reflected and looked back at my life, I realized I always had backup plans.
You did? That's
And
interesting.
yeah, I didn't know. Don't ask me why.
No,
Uh,
I mean, it's not a matter of asking you why, but I love hearing that, because I think I'm
yeah.
always telling my clients, have a plan B. I think
Yep.
too often people don't have an exit plan. They get their sights set on one thing, and when it doesn't happen, they're at a complete loss as to what they're going to do.
And I
Right?
started my side business was a real estate business 20 years ago now. So probably about halfway through my government career, I started a side business because I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this all the way through. And
You mean the
with
government? The
the
government.
government, yeah, most of us the stats are, and by talking, usually you leave around year 5 to 7. Uh,
Because
you just hate it. Yeah, you're burned. But it doesn't mean that I couldn't adapt and do things. I did. I loved my government career to a point.
yeah,
There was pieces of it that just drove me nuts, and they drive everyone else nuts
yeah,
who is a free thinker,
yeah,
because I'm an improvement guy. I want to fix things. I'm a
yeah,
fixer. I started
yes.
off as a mechanical engineer in college. I have this whole side where I'm like systems, processes,
So very,
streamline,
very left-brained.
and the government wants nothing to do with that. I thought that they would be open to Gary's great ideas of saving money, doing things more practically,
Mm,
and, making our lives a little bit better instead of so painful in the job. We can do things to better our lives and still get the job and more done. I found they didn't like that. I think at the end, it just boiled down to I was completely and utterly dissatisfied, but I felt I was making zero difference. But for me, it just had run its course too. I'd done it so long, and there's a lot of us do that too. It's time for the next step.
yeah,
And I had to make a decision. Let this job drive me into the ground, or I need to make a change now. And it was painful. A whole host of things had to happen. And, laws of circumstance, things had to compile. They had to come together. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm out. And I'm like, what do I do? And it was more of, not that I didn't know what to do, because I had a
you
plan.
had a plan, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. Even when you have a plan, there is that moment where it's like, oh, this is really happening now,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and think of being in the system, and anyone who's been, especially the military and the government, that it's very different than a normal job.
Yes,
So it's a different culture.
yes,
The way everything works, everything is completely different than a 9 to 5 job. It just is.
yeah,
And going from that back into the civilian world, we like to call it the real world, I call it,
yeah.
it's a shock to the system. And I've said that anyone who spends that much time or does even a full tour in the military, I think you end up with some form of PTSD.
Yeah.
I think you do. And I don't use that term lightly. I
No,
just
I
think,
understand.
yeah, it's a weird adaptation going back.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to take some deep breaths and try and figure out, okay, that life is done. It is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from here forward, I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because your hand's kind of held. You're in the system that's kind of doing a lot of stuff for you.
Right. So how many years has it been since you started The Simple Life?
The Simple Life's fairly new. I went in, when I left, I started a health company, which was
right.
Yeah. So I consulted with athletes, and I was doing training for high-end athletes, but also personal clients. And I built a supplement line, and I was doing consulting on the side. And then I ended up, being a college professor, and I taught criminal justice courses and investigations. And And I just did whatever it took. And the health world was really rewarding because I was teaching the things I learned while not only through my own personal experience, but working at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, working for the FDA.
Right.
But also my life was going in a different direction. I realized I was going into life simplification, as I call it now, because I'd sold my house. I'd sold most of my belongings. I'd downsized. I'd gone debt free.
Mm-hmm.
I literally had true freedom for the first time in my life, as opposed to when I was a kid, because, I didn't have any debt.
Right.
They weren't giving credit cards to 12-year-olds like they do now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? It was just, I'm finally free.
Yeah.
And then you look back and go, wait, how did I get here? How did I kind of figure this thing out? And it was experience. And I think it was just the fact that I'd been told what I was supposed to do for so long that I said, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do it my way, long as it doesn't harm anyone.
Yeah.
And let's see where this thing goes.
Yeah. So you had the health business going and all of that. And it sounds like you were working hard at it and it was starting to burn out on it a little bit.
Yeah. Cause it's a very difficult life. And there's on income level, the way I was
transactional too.
Yeah. You can only have so many clients.
Right.
You're going to max it out at some point. And I realized that I wanted to take things a step further. So I wrote some books that I had a marketing guy, kind of part-time marketing guy, helping me out. And he told me publish them, and I published them, which was probably a mistake because I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a writer by background. I have not taken journalism courses. I'm a math guy. And so, I was figuring it out, but people liked them, and I wrote them primarily for clients. And so from there, though, I learned that what I was doing was working. And then I had my off the grid project. I'd been planning this thing for years.
Yeah.
Not necessarily living off the grid. It was more living remotely, finding some land in the woods.
Oh, I see.
And it evolved into an off grid project because
But you were just doing that for you at that point, right?
The book on going off the grid, which has been my bestseller for 3 years now, was a book that was never intended to be written. Ever. This was my personal journey. And what happened was I did an interview. I'm a primal paleo guy, and I was on a podcast. And they said, hey, what are you up to? And it was a self-reliant survivalist podcast. I was pretty well known in those circles. He just went, wait a second, we've never even talked about this. And I go, no, it's just something I'm doing in life. I planned on it. I went debt free. I prepared for this. I've been saving. I'm doing what I can to make it happen. I just bought the land. And I got a ton of emails. Everyone's all, what are you doing? How'd you do it? Where'd you move to? And I just literally started. I had just built the roads because it was raw land. There was nothing here. Zero. Trees and dirt. That was it. And so I was working on the access road, and I went, I better start documenting this. And I just, so I put the book out, didn't know what I was doing yet again, and it kind of took off. And not huge. I mean, I'm an overnight success that took 10 years and is still in progress.
But it sounds like there was kind of a natural evolution from the health business into the simple life. And it just kind of, there was something that was calling to you for yourself, but there was interest that picked up and you were enjoying it.
Well, it was a new adventure, right? This is a whole new aspect of life that I hadn't really explored since I was a kid. I hadn't been that free since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I lived in that place. It was about 475 square feet that I moved into.
Yeah.
I reduced my expenditures by 2/3.
Yeah.
Like I said, became debt free.
Yeah.
Moved into my travel trailer, and then transitioned. And I've been living in a travel trailer for 7 years now, to include my house.
Yeah.
I go back and forth. And I created this whole weird lifestyle that people are like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
And from that, the going off the grid. So now you've got a health company. You put out a book that's called Going Off the Grid. It's getting a little confusing, right? Even I was confused.
Yeah.
And so I was getting ready to try and figure out, I had some marketing and writer guy kind of sit me down and go, hey man, you might want to give this writing thing a little more time, maybe focus on it. And I went, no, I was thinking about it, but I wasn't sure. The book business is pretty difficult. And, I do this stuff myself. And he's all, no, just do it. You've got all these ideas and things you want to teach. Just do it.
Yeah.
So I created the RV living book was already planned because that was kind of the next natural evolution from going off the grid, right? Talk
Yeah.
about how RV living kind of ties all this together. And my website's a little confusing and I pivoted. I've been really good. I pivot. When I see something's not working,
Yeah.
I stop and reorganize and I reboot.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And it wasn't that the health business was failing. My heart wasn't as much into it. I did not feel that, it wasn't where I wanted to be long term, but I still wanted health to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just rebooted the company. The Simple Life kind of came about. And I came up with that. And I said, this is what I'm teaching. This is what I'm doing. I'm living the simple life.
Yeah.
No marketing, gurus and team coming up with this. I came up with it organically.
Yeah.
And so I started the Simple Life book series and I was writing the follow-up to Going Off the Grid. And then I got a publishing deal for a workbook for living off the grid. And so all this stuff started to fall together. And now this has been a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still fairly new. This is all work in progress. It's got a long way to go.
What I love hearing about this, and this is something I want my listeners to hear, is that there's a way in which you kind of allowed yourself to be open to how these opportunities started to show up and you didn't ignore them. I think sometimes people put blinders on. They're so busy on a path that they almost miss the opportunities that are almost right in their face. And you kind of took a moment, like you said you stopped, you organized, and you rebooted. Like you said, oh, I was just doing this for myself. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. People are interested in this. And even though I'm kind of private in a way, and I don't want to shine too bright a light on this, there's an opportunity to teach something here. I do want to help people. It doesn't take away from the health piece of things, but I can share this with people, and there's some energy around this. I think I'll pay attention, and I think sometimes people bypass even some of those little subtleties that sometimes are even not so subtle. And so I love the way it kind of. It was knocking on your door, even if it was a little dull knock, and now it's kind of bearing some fruit. It's kind of there's just something nice about the way in which it's unfolding in your life in a way where it's kind of woven into who you are in a more genuine way. I think a lot of the things that you've done in the past served your needs in very practical ways, and you were very clear about why you were doing some of the things you did in the past. You were also clear about how those things didn't fit who you were at the time. And now it feels like what you're doing work-wise both fits who you are and the way you want to live your life. It seems like there's a like more of a symbiotic kind of relationship between your work and who you are, more so than ever before in your life. Like everything seems to be just fitting together in a much nicer way for you. And I think that's a great place to be coming from in terms of how you can then help others. And it's not about telling, hey, everyone, you should do it the way I'm doing it, but it's more about, here's an example of somebody who's found his way into a place where he kept his eyes and ears open. Certain things showed up and he stepped into them and he tried them and he had no expectations about where they'd go, but he's trying them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and that's basically what I teach in Finding Your Life Purpose, right?
Yeah.
It changes. People sometimes find it early on. Some people, it takes most of their life. And there's different pieces of it that come together, but you have to find it because as humans, I think that's part of our problem today is we're unsatisfied. We're unfulfilled. And the reason we are is because we're in this system again that we didn't create. Right. And we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole and it's not, or is it a round peg in a square? Yeah, that's it.
Well, either way.
Yeah, either way. And, and what's happening is people are forcing things, I think, and what they're doing is they're giving up. They're just saying, this is the way it is.
Right.
I'm just going to do it this way.
Well, how often do you hear people say that, right? It is the way it is. And they resign themselves to a reality that they think or they believe they can't change. And I think there are certain circumstances, things happen in people's lives that they can't have control over, but then there are things they do have control over.
And that's what I'm trying to teach, is the things that you do have control over.
Right.
And that's, I think, what makes the Simple Life very unique in a sense too, because I'm not writing just a rah-rah book or rah-rah books. What I'm doing is I'm going, okay, from life experience and teaching others, this is what I have found to be the biggest elephants in the room.
Yeah.
And if you change these, I have found everything else becomes much simpler.
Right.
And not only that, but it allows you to pursue the path that you want. And it's like my next book, Financial Freedom. I'm not just plugging these books. I feel terrible.
That's okay.
But they're what I teach. And the Financial Freedom book is so different. I have hopes. I'm really excited about this book because it was the hardest one to write, because there was a ton of math and I had to check it about 1 billion times.
Yeah. How can people find out more about your work? I know in the introduction we mentioned your website. Everything will be in the show notes. What is it that, where can people find your books and find the resources that you offer?
My website's the best place to go. The Simple Life Now, NOW.com. Don't go to the Simple Life. Like I said, you'll end up on Nicole Richie and I think Paris Hilton's something.
Oh gosh.
I forgot about that when I picked the name.
That is
totally
so
forgot
funny.
about that. Yeah, irony, right?
Fast, huh?
Whoa. Yeah, you compare Gary to Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie.
Wow. I love it though.
It works.
That.
And that's the best place. All my books, everything is on there. I've had a full-blown e-commerce website for years.
Great.
And also Amazon. All my books are pretty much worldwide. You can get them almost anywhere.
Great.
But my website's the best place. And sign up for the newsletter because, like I said, I don't use Facebook and all that. I use Twitter here and there, use Pinterest. But my newsletter is very personal. It's where I talk to everyone who follows me. Okay. And I share information and, I'll give my book away for free for people, my advanced reader team who I'm still developing, and get feedback because I want real honest feedback.
Yeah.
Because these books are not for me. I don't write these for me.
Right.
And I change my books per feedback. If they tell me I missed something or they don't like this, I'll go back and I'll rework these books. Yeah.
That's great. I love it. I love how engaged you are with your audience and you are truly trying to help a lot of people. So
the best I can. I call it putting my little pinch of ingredients in the positive change pie. That's all I can do.
It's great. I love it. Well, Gary, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Sharing your story and all the work that you're doing. And I really appreciate having you here today.
Oh, thanks for letting me share and get on my soapbox for a little bit.
I hope you found my interview with Gary Collins intriguing. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about the twists and turns of his professional background and health and lifestyle choices. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 045. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Gary, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygulerloeb.com/Apple. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you, and who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, You can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.